I never wanted to come back. But after my mother passed, there was no choice. The old house sat at the end of a long, cracked driveway, half swallowed by overgrown trees. The windows stared like dead eyes, glass smeared with dust and time. I sat in my car for a long time, the engine idling. The house felt wrong, like something had been waiting. I shook the thought away. It was just a house. I killed the engine, stepped out, and grabbed my bag. The front door groaned as I pushed it open, and the scent of dust, damp wood, and something faintly sour curled into my nose. Inside, everything was the same. The faded wallpaper, the crooked paintings, the cradle in the corner of the living room. I stopped, a chill creeping over me. That cradle. It had always been there, but there had never been a child. It wasn't mine. I was an only child, and my mother had never had another. Yet the cradle had remained a silent fixture in the house, its wood polished, its cushions pristine. I had asked my mother once, why do we have it? She never gave me a straight answer, just a tight smile, a hand on my shoulder. Some things aren't meant to be explained, sweetheart. I stepped closer now, staring down at the thing. It was just a cradle, just wood and fabric. But as I looked at it, something in my chest tightened, and then the air shifted. I felt it, like the weight of a room, changing, pressing down, thick and unseen. I turned away quickly. I was just tired, just imagining things. But as I made my way upstairs, a sound drifted up behind me. A slow, rhythmic creaking, like wood rocking back and forth. I froze, my breath catching. No, it had to be the wind. That was the only explanation. I swallowed, forced myself to ignore it, and kept walking. But as I climbed the last step, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. The second floor smelled even worse. The air was stale, thick with the weight of things left undisturbed for too long. I moved through the hallway, trailing my fingers along the faded floral wallpaper. My old bedroom door stood slightly ajar, and as I stepped inside, something deep in my stomach twisted. Everything was exactly as I left it. The bed, the desk, the bookshelf lined with old, forgotten novels. Except something was wrong. I didn't see it at first, not until I turned toward the closet. Hanging on the door was a mobile, a baby's mobile. My breath caught. I had never owned one. I stepped closer, reaching up to touch it. It spun gently. The tiny figures, wooden horses, stars, and an old-fashioned doll, twisting on their strings. And then it moved on its own, not from my touch, not from draft. It spun, slow and deliberate, as if someone had set it in motion. I backed away quickly, heart hammering. No, this was just stress, just my mind playing tricks on me. But as I turned away, a whisper brushed against my ear. Soft, almost familiar, not empty, never empty. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt alive around me. The wood creaked in ways it shouldn't have. The air had a strange, subtle movement, as if something unseen was shifting just out of view. And then, at 3:12 a.m., I heard it. A sound that shouldn't exist. A lullaby. Faint, distant, almost dreamlike. It was coming from downstairs. I lay frozen, my breath caught in my throat. No, I had locked the doors. No one was here. But the singing continued, soft and rhythmic. And then, woven between the melody, the creaking of the cradle. I couldn't move. For a long time, I just lay there, forcing myself to believe it was nothing. But deep down I knew something was rocking the cradle. And whatever it wasn't me. At sunrise, I forced myself downstairs. The house was silent. Too silent. I crept toward the living room, my legs heavy with dread. The cradle sat in its usual spot. It wasn't moving. It looked exactly the same. But as I stepped closer, something caught my eye. A mark scratched into the wood. Long, jagged, like a name. I leaned in, my fingers tracing the letters, and my stomach dropped. It was my name. I staggered back, my breath coming fast and shallow. No, I had never touched that cradle, had never carved anything into it, and yet the mark was old, the wood around it worn and faded, as if it had been there for years. But that was impossible. And then the air shifted again. A pressure settled in the room, thick and heavy, and from somewhere behind me, a breath. Soft, close, not empty. I spun around, heart slamming into my ribs. But there was no one there. The house was empty, except it wasn't. Not anymore. The house felt different after I saw my name carved into the cradle. It wasn't just the eerie feeling anymore. It was certainty. Something was here, something that knew me. I spent the morning convincing myself it had to be my imagination. Maybe my mother had carved my name in it when I was a baby, even though I knew I had never been in that cradle. She had always refused to talk about it. And now she was gone. No answers, no explanations. Just the house, the whispers, and the goddamn cradle. That night, sleep came in jagged, restless pieces. And then, at some point, I wasn't alone. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, but I could hear the sound of something soft breathing beside me, the scent of rotting wood and something sickly sweet, and the cradle, creaking, back and forth, and underneath that, something even worse. A sound that shouldn't have been there. A wet, gurgling giggle. It was the most unnatural thing I'd ever heard. A baby's laugh, but wrong. Like something that didn't understand what laughter was trying to mimic it. I forced my eyes open, and I wasn't in my bed anymore. I was standing in the living room, in front of the cradle. It rocked, slowly, deliberately, and then the music started. Soft, faint, a lullaby I knew but didn't remember learning. And inside the cradle, beneath the folds of a white lace blanket, something moved. Something small, something breathing. The blanket shifted. I reached out. I didn't want to, but I did. And as my fingers brushed the fabric, the thing inside let out a sharp, high-pitched cry. The sound ripped through me like knives in my skull. And then I woke up, back in my bed. My skin was ice cold, my clothes damp with sweat. But the worst part? The sound of the cradle was still echoing in my ears. I needed answers. If my mother had ever written anything down about the cradle, it would be upstairs in the attic. The attic door groaned as I pulled it open. The smell hit me immediately. Stale dust, rotting paper, and underneath it, something else. That same, sickly sweet scent of decay. I forced myself inside. Boxes were piled high, stacked in messy rows. I started searching, shuffling through old clothes, yellowed documents, anything that might explain the cradle's existence. And then I found the photograph. It was tucked inside an old leather-bound book. A black and white photo of my mother. She looked young, 17, maybe 18. She was standing outside this house, a nervous smile on her face. But she wasn't alone. Next to her was another woman, and she was holding a baby. The baby's face was blurred, as if the photo had been damaged. My pulse pounded. Who was the woman? Who was the baby? I turned the photo over. There was something written on the back. Not empty. Never empty. I dropped it immediately. The words were the same as the whisper I had heard in my room. I stared at the photo on the floor, my hands shaking. And then the attic door slammed shut behind me. The room plunged into darkness. The air changed, a sharp drop in temperature, an almost suffocating pressure. And then, in the pitch black, the lullaby started again. A soft, distant humming, getting closer. My breath came in sharp gasps. I wasn't alone. Something was in here with me. And then, something moved in the corner. A shadow, darker than the rest. It shifted, stretched, unfolding in slow, jerky movements. And then it crawled toward me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My back hit the wall, nowhere left to go. And then the thing stopped, right in front of me, close enough that I could feel its breath. And then, in a voice that was half child, half something else, it whispered, not empty. I screamed. The lights flashed back on, and the attic was empty. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I locked myself in my room, sitting on the bed with the lights on, waiting. At 3:12 a.m., the house came alive again. Creaking wood, faint whispers, the soft thump of footsteps. But I didn't move, didn't go downstairs, didn't check the cradle. And by sunrise, I had made up my mind. I was leaving. Whatever my mother had hidden, whatever this house was keeping inside it, I wanted no part of it. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and as I reached the front door, I felt it again. That pressure in the air, like the house was waiting, like it knew. My fingers closed around the doorknob. And then I heard it, a sound that shattered every rational thought I had left. From behind me, in the living room, a baby's cry, long, piercing, real. I turned. The cradle was rocking violently. And then the blanket was pulled aside, just for a second, just long enough to see what was inside. My vision blurred. My stomach twisted. My mind rebelled. No, no, no. The thing in the cradle wasn't a baby. It was me. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at the thing in the cradle, the thing that looked like me. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't a hallucination. It was me, a small, pale infant version of myself lying in the old wooden cradle, its skin too thin, its eyes too wide, and it was staring back. The house seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. The lullaby hummed through the air, an unseen voice singing me to sleep. But I wasn't asleep. I was awake, and I was trapped. I stumbled back, my vision swimming. The floor beneath me felt wrong, soft, like it might swallow me whole. And then the baby smiled, a grotesque, unnatural stretch of lips over tiny, rotting teeth. And in a voice that wasn't a baby's at all, it whispered, "Come back inside." The lights flickered. The cradle lurched forward, sliding toward me as if something unseen had pushed it. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys. Don't remember shoving the door open. I just remember the cold night air slamming into me as I bolted outside, into the yard, gasping for breath. Behind me, the house stayed silent, but I knew it was watching. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I wrenched the door open, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the keys. The engine roared to life, and then the radio blared. Not static, not a station, a recording. A woman's voice, low and familiar, singing the lullaby. My mother's voice. I slammed my hand against the dial, trying to shut it off. But the song wouldn't stop. A child's voice joined in, softer, echoing. I looked up at the house, at the second-story window, at the shape standing there, watching. My stomach lurched. The shape was me, a child-sized silhouette pressed against the glass. Small hands on the window, face tilted, watching, waiting. I hit the gas. Tires screeched against the pavement. I tore down the empty street, not daring to look in the rearview mirror. I drove for nearly an hour before I stopped at an old gas station outside of town. I sat in the parking lot, trying to catch my breath, my heart still slamming against my ribs. And then I realized I still had the photo, the one I'd found in the attic. I pulled it from my pocket, turning it over again. Not empty, never empty. I ran my thumb over the words, trying to steady my breathing. And that's when I noticed something else, a corner of paper sticking out from the old book I'd grab along with it. A hidden page. I carefully unfolded it. It was my mother's handwriting, a journal entry dated long before I was born. I hear the baby at night. I hear crying, but it isn't mine. It never was. It never will be. The house remembers. The house never forgets. The cradle waits. I was supposed to be the last, but still here, waiting for another. I could barely breathe. The last? What the hell did that mean? I flipped the page over. There was only one more sentence, scrawled in frantic, uneven letters. If you leave, it will follow. I didn't go home. I checked into a motel off the highway, a place with too many lights and too many people. I locked the door, jammed a chair under the handle, and left every light on. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it, that soft, wet giggle, that sickly sweet humming. By 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I sat on the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror across the room. And then the lights flickered for just a second. And when they came back, my reflection didn't move. My body turned to ice. My reflection was still staring, still smiling. And then, in a voice that sounded just like mine, it whispered, "Come back inside." The lights went out. The cradle's lullaby filled the room. And behind me, in the darkness, something breathed. The motel room was pitch black. The lullaby swelled around me, the soft hum pressing against my skull like it was inside my head. And behind me, something breathed. I couldn't move. The air was thick, damp, wrong, like I was standing in a graveyard after the rain. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to run, but I couldn't, because I felt it, right there, standing just behind me, watching. And then a voice whispered my name. My name. Not a mistake. Not the wind. Not a dream. Something in the dark knew who I was, and it wanted me to listen. The lights snapped back on. The air cleared. The lullaby was gone, and so was whatever had been standing behind me. My reflection was normal again, my own wide-eyed face staring back at me. But I wasn't safe. I knew that now. The house wasn't done with me, and I had no idea how to stop it. I grabbed my mother's journal, flipping through the pages again, searching for something, anything that could tell me what I was dealing with. And then I found it. A page near the end, one I hadn't noticed before. One with a name. Mara. I didn't recognize it. But my mother had written it over and over again, like she had been trying to remember, or would try to forget. And at the very bottom of the page, in shaking handwriting, she'd written, "I stole her name, and now she wants mine." I gripped the journal so tight my knuckles turned white. What the hell did that mean? Who the hell was Mara? And what did she have to do with me? I knew I couldn't run forever. Whatever this was, it wasn't going away. And if I didn't end it now, I didn't think I ever would. So I did the only thing that made sense. I went back to the house. The sky was still dark when I pulled into the driveway. The house loomed before me, its windows black and empty, like a corpse with its eyes rotted away. I took a deep breath, and then I stepped inside. The second I crossed the threshold, I felt it. The air was heavier here, thicker, like I was walking into something alive, something that knew me. The lullaby started up again, distant at first, coming from upstairs. From the nursery, from the cradle. I forced myself to move. My legs felt like lead, but I climbed the stairs, one slow step at a time. And when I reached the door, it was already open. The cradle sat in the center of the room, rocking slowly. Empty, but I wasn't alone. I felt it. Something standing in the shadows of the corner. Something watching me. I turned my head slowly, and then I saw her. Mara, a woman. Thin, wrong. Her skin was gray and stretched, like someone had pulled it too tight over her skull. Her mouth didn't move, but I heard her whisper. Soft, sweet, like a mother singing a lullaby. You have my name. Her head tilted. Her eyes, black and endless, locked onto mine. I wanted back. I couldn't breathe. My pulse slammed in my ears. The air around me shifted, growing heavier, like the whole house was leaning in, watching, waiting. And then Mara stepped forward. The shadows moved with her. The lullaby grew louder, and I knew I had to give her what she wanted. Mara took another step forward. The shadows twisted around her like living things, curling at her feet, reaching for me. The cradle kept rocking. Slow, steady, empty, and her voice sweet, soft, cold. You have my name. My throat tightened. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake up. But this wasn't a nightmare. This was real, and I knew what she wanted. I didn't understand everything, not yet, but I understood enough. My mother had taken something from her, not just her name, her life, her existence. She had erased Mara, buried her beneath lies and time, and now she wanted to be remembered. She wanted to take something back, and the only thing I had left to give was my name, my identity, my place in this world. Give it back, she whispered, tilting her head, her dark, hollow eyes locked on mine. Her voice wasn't angry. It was hungry, waiting, expecting. I had two choices. Give her my name or fight her. But what did fighting even mean? My mother had spent her whole life running, and she was still dead. Would I end up like her? Would I become a name in a forgotten journal? Just another shadow in this house? Or worse, would I become nothing at all? The cradle rocked faster. The lullaby swelled. Mara took another step forward, the shadows pulling at my feet like hands grasping at my ankles. It was never yours to keep, she whispered. And then she reached for me. I don't remember deciding. I don't remember speaking. But suddenly, I heard my own voice. Small, weak, a whisper that wasn't mine. Take it. The moment the words left my lips, the air in the room shifted. Mara stopped. Her lips curled upward just slightly, like she was pleased. And then she breathed in. I felt it, like something pulling from inside me, like something slipping away. The cradle stopped rocking. The lullaby stopped. And Mara was gone. I don't remember leaving the house. I don't remember getting in my car, driving away, or checking into a motel an hour outside of town. I just remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at my own face and not recognizing it. Something was missing. A weight lifted, but at a cost. And then I saw the journal, still in my hands, still open. My mother's words stared back at me, sharp and frantic. I stole her name, and now she wants mine. I grab a pen. I try to write my name at the bottom of the page, but my hand froze. I knew what I wanted to write. I knew what my name should be, but when I tried to put down, nothing came. Like it had been taken from me, like it had never been mine to begin with. I stared at the empty space for a long time, and then, for the first time in my life, I heard my own voice whisper a name I didn't recognize. Mara. And I smiled. Final thoughts. Did Mara take my name? Or did I become her? Is me mother's past finally buried? Or is it just beginning again? This isn't the kind of ending where you wake up and everything is okay. Because sometimes the cradle never stops rocking.